Okay, so I'm David Long. I'm a professor of international affairs at Carleton University in the Norman Paterson School. I've been teaching for around 20 years now. I guess I would describe myself as a transatlantic scholar in the sense that I'm a Brit by birth, and some of my interests derive from the fact that me and my family are all Europeans as well as being Canadians. In terms of my research, I'm actually interested in foreign and security policy of the European Union, and in regard to that, I'm interested in the way that the EU makes foreign policy and the extent to which they can or cannot get their act together. I find it interesting that on day-to-day business, the Europeans have no problems cooperating, but when push comes to shove on harder issues, they tend to fly in all different directions, and we know that, for instance, classically from the war in Iraq, but more recently even with regard to Iran, there tends to be differences over Libya and so on and so forth. So I'm interested in the way the EU decides in this area of policymaking, in which sovereignty is taken to be the most important factor. What's fascinating about this area, among other things, is that the EU is, more than anything, a body that's changed dramatically over the last little while. It's always been a unique international actor. It's not a state. It's not really an international organization, or really not merely an international organization. But in addition, it keeps changing. It changes in terms of enlargement, that is to say, it began with 6 members, it's gone up to 27 now, it's talking about including more. So the increase in membership is one important factor. Besides that, though, sovereign states are supposed to control their own foreign policies, yet the member states of the EU have decided to pool theirs to some degree, and the way that they've pooled them and the extent that they have done so and the mechanisms that they've used have changed over time. This has meant that while they began with soft declaratory policy, they would make statements about horrible things happening in far-flung corners of the world, the EU has progressively decided to do rather more. Even there, though, once you get into military missions, once you get into some of the harder politics, one of the things that's interesting about looking at EU foreign policy is the EU tends to be very good at making decisions at the lowest common denominator and at in a sense, the lowest level in terms of missions. Now, my interest in foreign policy, the fact that I'm a transatlantic scholar in the sense of my migration here, has led me to a further interest, and that is in Canada-EU relations. Now, in that regard, I have a particular take on the relationship. I've described Canada-EU relations as the other transatlantic relationship. Most people, when they say transatlantic relations, tend to think of either NATO or they think of single relationships between the United States and, say, the UK, the special relationship that the United States has with Britain. Funnily enough, much of the time the US has special relationships with the other countries of Europe as well, like Germany, like France, like any European country, in fact. Canada-EU relations are the other transatlantic relationship in a couple of ways. First of all, on one side, it is the European Union, not NATO, not the individual member states. So it's this aggregation of the Europeans on the European side. On the other side, it's a reminder, something that Canadians have to do on a regular basis. It's a reminder that transatlantic relations are about relations between the Europeans on the one side, yes, maybe, but not just the Americans on the North American side, that it's also the Canadians. In this regard, I've been interested in the way that Canada is able to insert itself into the relationship with Europe outside of NATO. Now, NATO has been particularly important for the government in the last several years in the course of this Conservative government. However, As a military or primarily defense-oriented organization, NATO only covers a limited range of policies, obviously, and the EU covers the whole range of other things, from environment to the economy to you name it, basically the whole range of policy areas. So the EU is important in terms of transatlantic relations for Canada. It poses, however, a difficulty, and the difficulty is this. We're a member of NATO, we're not a member of the European Union. We're outside the cooperation. That means that we, if we're trying to get influence, we don't have the sort of sway that we would have in the case of NATO, where we have a seat at the table, where we are one of the equal members. By contrast, the EU, as influential as it is not a place where we sit. Obviously, because it's the European Union. I'm interested in the way that Canada can actually influence policy decisions that the Europeans take across the board. There are a variety of those, from trade to environment to a variety of international policies. So that's me.